Hey, what's happening there, Miles Biggs?
Hello. Another happy Thursday to you.
It is a happy Thursday. I'm a mess with my camera today. Hey, listen, if you're out there and you're watching this, tell me how much of my camera is a mess today. I really want to know. So, all right, everybody, welcome. Dave Cooper Live. This is Increasing Influence with Miles Biggs Ideas. And today's kind of a cool day, Miles. Not every day we get to hang out with an Olympic athlete, huh?
Absolutely not. No, it's really cool. I'm excited to pick his brain, learn all about it.
Yeah, 100%. All right, everybody, we are on LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live, and Facebook Live. So please hit that like and share button right now. And as always, please go to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything past, present, or future. Because I know not everybody has the time to spend every day for 1 hour with us, do they, Miles?
Oh, they have the time. They just have to make the time, Dave.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, you got to make the time.
It's all the scheduling. You know, talking to Ryan prior to bringing him in today, he was talking about when he was an Olympian, they scheduled everything for him. So maybe we should have him talk to all the Olympic athletes so they schedule the time to join us every day at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, I like it.
Let's see if we can pull that one off. All right, let's bring Ryan in from Bedford Developments. Come on in, Ryan. Hey, what's happening? Ryan Bedford, welcome to the show.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. How are you?
We're doing great. And yourself?
Doing fantastic.
I love it. So, Ryan, you heard the introduction. We are on LinkedIn Live, YouTube, and Facebook right now. We got people starting to tune in from all over. I think this is going to be a great conversation because, one, this show is all about increasing influence. But two, it's also about construction. And here is somebody, and that somebody is, that went from being an Olympic athlete in 2010 to being a very, very successful developer, I guess is the best way to say it. So I think it would be great to actually, hear your story where it began, because who goes from an Olympian to building stuff?
Yeah, Ryan, it's a wild kind of turn in a career choice, you might say. I mean, going from Olympic sport, you're really kind of, your nose is down, focused on one simple thing, and that's going to the Olympics and hopefully trying to get on the podium. And every single Olympian out there, or people that are striving to be Olympians out there, know what that focus is like. And
right.
So to be able to do a totally 180-degree turn and jump into real estate development, construction and real estate development, it was a bit of a change for me.
Yeah, I can imagine 100% that it was. I mean, you go from something where your whole life for years and years is revolving around, really learning the trade of skating, which you were in, and I'm gonna let you get into that, and trying to take that to the next level, to coming into development where it's kind of, it's just not as structured typically. So why don't we lead in with that? Why don't you tell us everything from the moment you were born till this very moment, but you only have 5 minutes to do it. So why don't you give us your background and tell us all about it?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Michigan. I started skating when I was 5. Moved out of the house when I was 15 to join our junior national team, you might say. By the time I was 17, I moved to Canada to train with the Canadian team, and was on the national team for the U.S. and when I was 19. So, I mean, I moved all over the place to these different teams, moved out of the house early. So I had to develop that independence early on. I mean, I had to be able to cook, clean, do my laundry, take care of myself very early on, because I didn't have my mom with me at the age of 15 when I left. So that was ingrained in me from early on. So as you focus day in and day out on that one goal of making it to the Olympics and hopefully making it on the podium, your mind is just laser focused on one thing. And so you just continue to practice. And I think there's a book out, and it talks about how if you want to perfect something, you have to do it for at least 10,000 hours. And I mean, I definitely have more than 10,000 hours in skating in, but you have to do it for that long to perfect it. And when I made that switch in 2010 into construction and real estate, it was like getting tossed into a lion's den, because here I am now. I was top of the sport, and top of that skill set. I had my 10,000 hours in. Nobody could tell me, how to do it. And then you jump into something where I've got 0 hours in on it. My experience level in terms of construction was working at Home Depot in an Olympic job program for a couple years, and that was the most level of construction that I've had. I've worked in the garden department and flooring department for a couple years just to pay some bills. But yeah, I mean, you're just getting tossed into it at ground zero, and it was definitely a struggle at first.
Yeah, I bet. Miles, man, this is right up your alley when it comes from marketing and PR and everything else. Why don't you tell us? Why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so I'd love to hear. You talk about being laser focused, right, and how you focused on one thing, and so then you said it's 180-degree shift. But I imagine that ability to focus is dead on. That doesn't shift, right? Whether you're speed skating or you're working construction, it's the same. So what did transition when it comes from just that idea of personal development and as an athlete, your body and your skill? How did that skill set transition over to the professional development at hour zero of construction to where you are now?
Yeah, so the focus is you definitely have, I've learned how to focus, but the issue with that is when you come from Olympic sport and you're getting to the very top, you know how to focus on very small, minute things. I mean, you're trying to detail and tweak the smallest little things. Maybe it's the blade technology, maybe it's your technique. It's very, very minute as to what you're tweaking, training programs, these little things. When I got tossed into construction and the development side, I didn't know what to focus on. I was like, okay, where do I focus here? Do I focus there? So I didn't have that experience on what to focus. And then that's kind of where, by jumping into a family business with my father-in-law, that's where he was able to kind of set the focus. And he was able to, he knew that I had that ability in me to be disciplined, to focus, to be able to be responsible for what I was doing. And so when he just said, hey, go do this, he didn't tell me how to do it. He just said, go do it, and I would figure it out. So, that's where I was able to kind of narrow my focus, was with that command of trying to get something done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, truly is. I mean, you go from that type of discipline and so many people surrounding you in Olympic sports, right? Like in my introduction, controlling every aspect of your life, to business where somebody just says, get it done. How stressful was that for you? Because that's still a transition.
Yeah, definitely a transition. I think time management was probably the hardest part. When you're told be at practice at 9 or 8 o'clock, you're on the ice at 9, you're going to be done by 11:30, 12 to eat lunch, and then you're going to see the physiotherapist at 1:30. You got practice again at 2:30 till 5:30. These elements are already in place. I could just look at the calendar and say, this is what I'm doing today. When you're in your own world, especially in construction, you rely on so many other moving parts, whether you're on a job site and you're planning to do something, but because the carpenter didn't do this or the plumber didn't do this, then it throws your schedule completely off. And you cannot. And so in construction, you're reacting. It's like you're constantly reacting to adjust your schedule. So going from that structure to just a wide open, even if you think you have control over it, you don't really have control over it. And that was probably the most difficult part.
Yeah, for sure. And well, it's like herding cats sometimes, I guess, is the best way to say it, right? I mean, when there's so many people involved, and I'm sure you're feeling it where you're at as well with the trade labor issues that we're having, and skilled trades is really, I guess, the better word to use. So with all of that, how has the business been since you've come in, right? Because you stepped into a family business. You're making the transition from Olympic athlete to developer. You're going from having all the best trainers in the world to jumping into the blue collar world, right? Of trades and everything else. Did you find that to be different and difficult for you? Just the people you were working with versus where you were? Yeah.
So I think the hardest part there was crossing the bridge of for the contractors and people that we dealt with, the whole spectrum, whether it was from a plumber to a bank president, it didn't matter who we were dealing with.
Right.
Kind of getting across to them that, I'm the real deal. I'm the real person who's here in front of you telling you this is what I want.
Right.
Because they all knew that I came from my father-in-law, and he blazed the path for me to get to where we are today. And so I had to overcome that kind of barrier where they respected me for myself, and as opposed to saying, oh, you just got there because of your father-in-law. So that was probably the biggest hurdle that I had to clear there.
Yeah.
So
go ahead, Moss. Sorry.
did being an Olympic speed skater help with that at all? I mean, is that like a card you get to pull out of your back pocket when you're trying to get in the door and to throw out there, or no?
It's one of those things that I don't play that card. My wife does a lot, but I try not to. But I
Right.
know that it spreads around. Like I know once one person found out, then other people find out. So I don't typically try to play it, but because I want my reputation to stand alone as it is as a business person, not because I was an Olympian, I got to this point. Those traits got me to where I am, but not necessarily the accolades.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, but your work ethic came out of a lot of this, right? So you have a proven work ethic, because a lot of people don't make it, to the Olympic Games, let alone they make it to training, some of them, but they don't make it to the games at all, right? And I think that's a big deal. And I think when you translate that over to the trades or somebody in the field, I can almost see as being a little bit intimidating to some extent.
Yeah. I mean, I looked at everything as everything's a competition to me. I mean, everything is. Like, I don't care if it's throwing a piece of paper into my trash can that's sitting over there. It's a competition for me. And so by switching over to the real world, I'm able to compete on multiple different things every single day. Yeah. And when you live in that moment as an athlete, whether it's at practice and we did a lot of cycling, but let's say I'm cycling up a hill, I want to beat every one of my teammates so bad. And if I knew that I was going to beat them, I want to beat them by more than what I did the day before.
Right.
And so you have that motivation in you to always want to do more. On a job site, when I first started, to me, the competition was, I always made sure I was the first one there and the last one to leave. Like nobody beat me to the job site and nobody stayed later than me on the job site. I just made sure of that. Like I knew that nobody was going to beat me in that realm. And then as I grew, it kind of grew into that as well, where I just, I'm up early in the morning, making sure everything gets done.
Miles, that sounds like you.
I am up early. Yeah, I prefer to get it done early for sure. And I'm curious when you said that, right? You said you did a lot of cycling for speed skating. So we back up to that. And so that's cross training in your sport. How do you cross train with construction as you made that switch? Were there things you did that trained like supporting muscles that weren't directly related to the business?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think there's really anything that can prepare you for construction that is like construction. I mean, it's one of those things where you have to go out there and physically use your hands. And one thing that I've been able to do on job sites is to build that respect, is that I am never going to ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't do myself.
Right.
Like, I mean, I don't care if it's cleaning crap out of the bottom of an elevator shaft. I mean, that's the type of stuff that they know that I will do it. I remember at one building, I had a plumber. We were building an apartment building for us, and we didn't have the elevator shafts can get filled with water, and you got to pump them out, but there's also debris in there. And I was down there with big muck boots on, cleaning it out with one other guy, and a plumber walks over and he goes, "That guy owns the building. Do you know that guy owns the building? He's down there in the shaft." And I'm like, I just like kind of rolled my eyes to the guy that was working with me, but I kind of had a laugh, because from that point on, he's going to look at it and go, there's really nothing that I'm too good to do. I should be able to do everything. If this guy owns this building and he's down there in the bottom of this elevator pit, that kind of was a cool moment, probably for him, and it was for me.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but there's two things there really to unpack. One is, you're leading by example, and I'm a firm believer in that as well. You're not too good that you won't clean the toilets in the office, right? It's just what you do. But the other side of that is that you learn something, right? You learn though, even though you think you're one of them, you're still not. You're still the guy that writes the paycheck. And hearing how they interacted and surprise, helps you stay a little bit humble, I think, because you learn that, hey, you were ignoring it, but you were hearing it. I think in their mind, like you said, it sets the stage that, I'm not going to say I'm not going to do it because I know he'll do it. And then, well, that's not going to be good for me. You set the stage for work ethics and culture.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Miles.
Well, I'd love to pivot off of just the personal stuff for a minute and talk construction, right? Like you were starting to get into projects. So
yeah.
I'd love to learn more about what you guys do with concrete and how that plays into things and your involvement there.
Oh, why don't I show them?
Yeah, let's look at it. Yeah.
There you go.
Ooh, look at that. Pretty.
I mean, that's a big building, so that's obviously something you guys have done. And I know you have several projects in the work, right? But you are into multifamily, concrete, ICF construction. Is that entire building ICF?
That entire building is ICF, yes.
Wow. And how many stories is that? 1, 2,
6.
6 stories.
Yeah. So my father-in-law, when he started the business about 40 years ago, he started an all suburban stick frame construction. I mean, everything was stick frame. And he's a very out of the box thinker. He actually started in the 80s doing solar envelope homes, things that could give his product a competitive advantage.
Right.
And so when I came on board, we got out of the suburban market, you might say, and kind of went into this urban mid-rise market where we were building 4 to 6 story buildings. And he made the shift and said, hey, let's try ICF. I mean, we need to get into doing get into doing this ICF. Someone had talked to him about it and he thought this was the coolest product ever. So we started on one project and it didn't go well, you might say, but the process didn't go very well because we were new to it. But once we learned how to do it, how to use it, it is bar none the best product for a multifamily building ever. You got the energy efficiency, you've got sound resilience in the wall. You've got the structural component where then you can load the floors with whatever deck system you may require, and it's mold proof, it's tornado proof, it's fireproof. It's pretty much everything that you want out of a wall system, especially the exterior wall system. Even though we do use it on some interior walls, it is bar none the best product out there for exterior walls.
So do you guys build just in the Milwaukee? Because I'm seeing Sarasota, Florida as well.
Yeah, we're just about to break ground on a project in Sarasota. We've actually owned it for 5 years now, the land for 5 years, but we're about to break ground on it. And the idea down there too is everybody in the Florida market right now on apartments is building them all out of wood.
Right.
And with, we've seen 3 hurricanes in the Gulf this year. Yeah. It's just not a smart move for a long-term investment. If you're going to look at holding something long, why would you build out of wood? I mean, even though they have the hurricane code say that, yes, you can build these out of wood, all the houses down in Florida are being built out of CMU. Right. And it just doesn't make sense to me to build a 4-story, 3-story apartment out of stick. So that's our goal, is to do a full concrete building down there in Sarasota.
So is it, when you say full concrete, are the interior walls also concrete?
On that project, yes. All the demising walls of the units would be concrete, and the floor would be a precast concrete.
Got it. And the interior walls would be ICF as well, I'm assuming? You just frame all the way through with ICF?
Yeah, so the demising walls are ICF, and then infill within the unit itself would be steel stud.
Got it. And just curious, timeline for a project of this scope?
That's a good question. Yeah, so we're on a 60 unit like that. It's probably about 11 months, 12 months to completion. Mm-hmm. On a project, we're about to also break ground on one in Milwaukee. It's 11-story that you had there up on the screen. That'll be the largest in the state of Wisconsin, the tallest for sure. It's an 11-story, all ICF exterior.
Right.
Steel on the inside, but exterior is ICF. It'd be the largest in the state of Wisconsin. But that one there is probably more of an 18-month build cycle.
Right. Yeah, it's a beautiful building on the water and everything else. So you got a lot to contend with there. And you guys handle everything from site work to handing over the keys?
Yeah, so what we did in the last, I'd say about 5 years, was we transitioned from a general contractor developer to just developing.
Okay.
And so we've been hiring our own, other GCs at this point, just to expedite that process. Before, let's say we could do one project every 18 months or 12 to 18 months. Now we can do 2-3 of them in a 12-month span. So we're trying to make the machine a little more efficient. And so we decided to kind of scrap building it ourselves. And now we are just developing it.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's a gorgeous project. And how many years has the company been around now?
So my father-in-law started his management, development, and construction company about 40 years ago. And in 2011-ish, we broke off the development side, the construction and development. We still manage all of our own units under his company. And we broke off the development for me to do other partnerships and third parties without that core group. Right.
Let's switch to this group here. So Miles, let's jump in. I know Miles is itching over there to say something. I keep running my mouth. I can tell the looks. He's like, come on now. But Miles, I really want to know one thing, because Ryan, you guys are very good, or you're very good at mixing your personal stuff with your business stuff on social media. Like, you don't hold anything back. And I tell you, dude, next time we get together, I'm going to have a haircut like you had in the Olympics, man. I'm going to have the stars and stripes engraved in my head. I don't have anything else up there. I might as well do something.
Yeah. It's everybody's got the bland, portrait photo with the suit and tie on and, on LinkedIn. So it's something just to kind of change it up a little bit. It stands out. So.
Sure. Go for it, Miles. I see it.
Yeah. So on that topic, right? It's where personal meets branding, your professional brand, you as an individual. So you said you hold back on the speed skater thing, that card, but then your profile picture is you speed skating. So how do you leverage the two? Where does just Ryan, the person, meet Ryan, the executive, and how does one support one another?
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things that I don't bring up in conversation. It's never brought up in conversation unless the other party asks. I don't say it, but if they go look at it online, then I'm not afraid I'm not hiding from it. It's one of those things where it's just like, I just don't like to be the person that's like, oh, I'm a world champion, I'm Olympian. I don't want to be that person, because my own merits outside of the sport should stand for themselves, as opposed to, all right, I'm an Olympian, so you should like me, or you should help me with this. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're whether you are, you're humble about it is what you are. And I appreciate that very much, but you do have also a confidence, because you have made it to a very high level in your life on many fronts now. And I think, mixing the two together in social media, to me, is perfectly acceptable. And you're right. It's always better when somebody else toots your horn, right? It is. Even for myself, I don't like running around, like, it's just like, who wants to do that? But it always feels good if somebody else does it. So you got to
we just did that before we hit record, right? And you're like, Miles, introduce yourself to Ryan. And I start talking to myself, and you're like, wait a second, he left something out there, and then you fill in the blanks. That I relate to that. Like, you don't want to walk around saying, "Hi, here are all my accomplishments."
Right.
Correct. Yeah. And I guess on a professional side, I do that, right? Like, so if we meet with a banker or an investment group or whoever it may be, I toot my horn on the professional side on what we've done and what we've been able to accomplish. But on the athletic side, I kind of leave that, like, to me, it doesn't have any merit in my world that I live in now. But other people think it's cool. So it does give me a leg up if they find out about it.
Well, I agree with that. I think it gives you a big leg up. It adds, it's instant credibility, man. That's what it is. We know that you didn't just get out of prison and you're a drug addict. You know what I mean?
Well,
That's kind of
you
the
never
difference.
know.
And you can instantly go Google you on the Olympic team. Like, so that's different than most people have. And that's what leads to whole social media. And I think this is a good way to round out this conversation because the rest of us, right? You know, we don't have the press and the background that you have. And that's why we have the show Increasing Influence, because, you know, if you want to be known in any industry as an expert, in today's day and age, everybody goes to social media and does a search. Everybody. If you're looking for a job, first place they go, you know, even us, I'll go to Facebook right away to see, you know, if you're, you know, snorting crack and, you know, or whatever on the weekends and having a good, you know, like I will. I mean, that's what we're looking for, to see what type of, you know, person you are. So, I mean, Miles, don't you agree? I mean, this is just the other side of it. Like the rest of us really have to put forth the effort to be known in a different way than Ryan.
Balance of sharing a personal side of you,
yeah,
to be relatable, but then oversharing where it counts against you, right? So
right.
It's finding that balance for whatever your situation is and knowing your audience. I think it's a big thing, like you said, Brian. When you're in front of the bank and they want to know how great you are, you have to tell them. You can't just let them figure it out for themselves because they're not going to take the time to.
Right.
But if you're at a cocktail party, you don't walk around shouting that you're an Olympian, because then it works against you. Now you're the arrogant guy, the confident guy. So it's
I mean, it's opened. I think that being an Olympian what it's done for me is it's opened doors that otherwise probably would not have been opened. I mean, I meet so many other people that I wouldn't, and so I guess I kind of take that for advantage of that a little bit. And you're right. I mean, your brand is something that you have to stand by, and you know, you got to watch. I mean, everybody's constantly watching what they're saying online, and so it's a tough world out there when it comes to social media. There's no doubt, but it's definitely opened doors to meeting people, sitting on different boards, and you know, I definitely can agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, why don't we give a few shout outs here? Let me look here in the audience. We have some, we got Judy Donnell joining us. You know, Judy Donnell, she's the head of all the associates at the NAHB. I think there's 88,000 of them. She's the chair for the associate of the NAHB. And she's with 84, you know, 84 Lumber. Do you guys have those in Milwaukee?
Oh yeah.
Did you know 84 Lumber is also a woman-owned business? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So Judy Donnell, thanks for joining us today. We have Rick Hawkins. He has a comment there. We got Alexandra DeCagny joining us, VP in Sales and Marketing. Love it. Tom Reddy, Synergy Steel. If you don't know Tom, you should know Tom. If you're doing any steel, he's he knows his stuff. And Michael Tonart is joining in today.
There you go.
How cool is that? And I heard you talking about introducing Ryan not too long ago before we started with
Dominic.
Yeah. Ex-NFL football player. You guys hang out. There's a lot of similarities between the two of you for sure. Absolutely. So Rick Hawkins is saying nice projects and also concrete and steel nice. And then Brent Taylor is saying, I'd love to lean into ICF construction. What's the embodied carbon look like for the system?
That is a very good question, and probably had a little bit over my head in terms of technicality on it. But I do, from what I understand, is there are ready mixes, and the ready mixes that we've used on our project have not done this, but there are ready mixes that are using carbon and in their concrete mixes that are, you know, able to reduce that footprint. And from what I've heard, it's actually making concrete stronger than the previous way of making concrete. So it's an interesting thing that I'm still trying to learn about. And I know the NRMCA has a full educational piece on all of that.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, you know, Building Systems Week, Brant. So if you haven't signed up for it, definitely sign up for it, because we are actually talking about all this stuff. We're talking about all the different concrete forms. In fact, day before yesterday, I'll go back in, because we had Mike. Well, actually, we had Michael Weber on, who's big, and Dan Mitchell.